back to another episode of the Beyond Barriers series with me, Ella B. Welcome back, guys, and as you know, this is a series I'm doing in order to help celebrate and share with you all the people who have had such a positive impact on the disabled sporting community. I hope you've enjoyed all the episodes so far. We're about halfway through the series, so hang on in there, we've got some amazing stories still to come. Starting with today, I'm really excited to introduce you to this athlete today. He is so hardworking and so dedicated to his sport. He's only been injured since 2016, so he's fairly new to the being disabled, but you would never ever know. He's amazing and is so strong-willed. As soon as you mention a leaderboard, he's there. He is so competitive and he wants to be at the top of that leaderboard. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you today to Ben Pritchard. Ben is a GB para rower and is aiming for Tokyo for his first Paralympics. I will let Ben tell his story, so please sit back and enjoy, and I would like to introduce you to Ben.
It's Beaumont. How are we?
Alright, how are you?
Good, thank you. Long time?
Long time. It feels like a blast from the past.
It feels like a blast of the past, absolutely.
How are you?
I'm doing all right, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, really good, thanks. Yeah.
Lockdown's treated you well?
It's doing well, actually, yeah. I feel like I'm fitter than ever because of lockdown.
Yeah, and congratulations on Rising Phoenix. What a documentary.
Thanks, did you enjoy it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If we throw back, if you go back through time, I met your mum first before I met you when I was playing with the Aces, and she introduced me to you, and you were kind of the first person in the outside world that I knew in a wheelchair,
We went shopping.
Yeah, we went shopping, and the little tips you gave me, like the wheeling down the slopes, etc. All this kind of stuff. And then I was just on Instagram, and then I didn't know you were doing the workout, wheelchair workouts. And then all of a sudden I saw somebody else that I'd connected with sharing a story, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then the more that I saw it, the more people were sharing it. And I was like, this is amazing. This is really cool. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you. It's so lovely. I actually met one of the girls who came to my Zoom classes. I think you put up something on Instagram about her the other day. Is it Helen Fincham?
Yeah, Helen Fincham. So I met her in the 2017 Spinal Games. She was at the Welsh Hospital and I was at, obviously, Stoke Mandeville.
Yeah.
And we just had like a great time laughing and stuff.
She was hilarious. I loved her.
So we've just kept in contact, and she only lives like 25 minutes up the road. So it seems a shame not to celebrate these massive milestones. In 8 days' time, I'll have been 4 years of wheelie, and she was 4 years of wheelie last week. So, just nice to have a coffee and chat up and reminisce.
Can't believe it's been 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years, man. Crazy.
So I was just going to ask you about the early life first, and look back at your early life, find out what you were like as a child, and were you sporty? I mean, you've always been competitive, I gather, because you're very competitive. But were you sporty growing up? Were you sporty with your siblings?
Oh yeah, hugely. I'm a family of 4 boys. There's my dad and me and my 2 brothers, and then my mum. So not only was I competitive against my brothers, I was also competitive against dad, and sport was a huge thing. And whether you see it luckily or unluckily, my dad had an accident in the police force, so I had to retire quite early. But then that meant that I had a stay-at-home dad that could take me to all the sports I wanted to do. So I'm so lucky because I got to try so many different sports. And, when you say to people, I played hockey, or I used to sail, or I did triathlon, I cycled, I went skiing, I did this, I did that. People are like, how did you have the time? And it was just because my dad was so willing for us to do all the sport and used to drive us everywhere. And I can remember him having to drop me off at athletics, to then take my other brother to swimming, to then take my other brother to judo. And, he was constantly like a taxi, But if it wasn't for my dad's commitment and his support and my mum's commitment and support, I wouldn't be where I am now, And I just listed off a load of things, but sailing was kind of the first sport I ever did. That was kind of the first sport that I raced in. And, it started off, it was in primary school, and one of my good friends, Sam Chess, his dad had a big yacht. Anyway, he persuaded me to go and try sailing. So I went down to the local yacht club with Sam and started sailing, and that's kind of my first foray into competitive sport. It was meant to be fun, but I quickly found that I liked the racing element to sailing, and went onto the Welsh squad and the British squad. You know, we're talking up until like under 16s. You know, it was nothing.
Yeah.
I say it was nothing serious. It was definitely
That's still
serious.
an achievement.
Yeah, no. I say it's nothing serious. It was definitely serious to me at the time, but
Yeah.
looking back now, you know, you kind of think, oh, that was a really good time in my life, and that's kind of where I first started to want to race people. And that was kind of.
That's so funny as well that you were also drawn to water as well at that point. It's like
Yes,
you're meant to be on the water.
Yeah, you know, I call myself, I've got a wave tattooed on my arm, but I call myself a sea baby because of, we grew up in Gower, so we grew up in a place called the Mumbles, which has got mountains, it's got the sea, and everything I did revolved around water. You know, I swam, I sailed, I surfed, I did lifeguards, you know, every part of my life involved a little bit of water. And I think that's why I was drawn to rowing as well. Like you say, the water was a huge part of my life. And then I kind of went on to triathlon, you know, and it's been well documented that when I was younger, I had an eye operation, so I wasn't allowed to play rugby. Now, being a Welsh boy, rugby is all you do. Yeah, it's all you do, you know. In school, your PE lessons are rugby, basically. You come home, rugby's on the TV. At the weekends, your dad's playing rugby, your parents, you know, my mum's referee in rugby, you know, she's an international level referee and stuff, so rugby was everywhere in my household, but I was never allowed to play it. So my PE lessons during like high school, or you know, from year 7 to year 13 involved hockey in the summer, but in the winter it was a lot of running around the fields cross country. And naturally you become quite talented at cross country if all you do is run around fields. So went to the Welsh schools and got a West Wales athletics bib and kind of that kind of stuff. And I was swimming as well, and it was on one of the cross-country meets that my biology teacher suggested I do the sport of triathlon, and I did and picked it up and represented.
What age were you then? Sorry.
16. So 16, year 11, and then kind of took 2 years to learn how to do a triathlon. Kind of took maybe a year, 2 years to want to try and represent the country and, you know, go down that kind of route. And I qualified to represent Great Britain at the age group European Championships in Turkey. And then, yeah, kind of everything has springboarded from that decision, you know. And if I didn't represent Great Britain at the age group champs in Turkey, I wouldn't have met Dan Bigham, Dean, Sam Brand, Tom, you know. We wouldn't have started the tri-pack. We wouldn't then become cyclists. And then I wouldn't have had my accident. I wouldn't have been in a wheelchair. So if you look back, you know, like, one turn on the road, it came to that decision to try the qualifiers. And I wouldn't change it, you know. And I loved it. I just loved the feeling you got when you're on your bike out with your mates chatting and, you know, being able to put the hammer down and get home and be like, yeah, that was a good session, you know. And I also like the versatility of how I could train with my bike because, like I said, I worked in London, but I used to train every day on the way into work. You know, I used to go and do a good hour session before I got to work. And it was the ability to do that and not have to go to a pool, then come home and then, you know, all those kind of things. And then at the weekends, you could go out and explore the countryside and see things you never saw before. You know, you could go out to different areas, get lost and really enjoy yourself. My friends used to think I was mad, you know, because on a Saturday I'd be out doing 6 hours on a bike while they were recovering from a hangover, you know, but that was my thing. They used to like going out on a Friday night, and I used to like going out for 6 hours on my bike.
Which shows your pure dedication to sport in general. So.
Yeah, I just think it, you know, and I've never been one to massively drink, and I think it's just because I enjoy sport so much, you know, and I probably get the same buzz out of that than people do when they are out on a night out, you know. You know, and I say sport is where I feel most comfortable. When I'm doing sport, I feel myself, I have a great time. And, you know, if you then jump forward to being in hospital, it was those sporting sessions that made me feel comfortable in my wheelchair, you know, and helped the confidence grow around our new life. Because unfortunately, you'll know this better than most because you've been in the chair longer than I have, but it sounds difficult because in my normal life, wheelchairs are normal because I hang around with people with disabilities because I'm part of the Paralympic squad, and I see people in disabilities, and a lot of the people I connect with have disabilities like yourself, you know, Jordan, Luce, Kingsley, you know, everyone has a disability. You know, it's normal to me. But then when you come back to Wales and you're with Megs and you go into a coffee shop, you're the only one in a wheelchair. So people stare, you know, and that initially was a real difficult thing for me to get over. The kind of the fact that everyone will look, and they're not doing it out of malice, they're just curious because you're not the norm. And sport then helped me get over that, because the more I did Paralympic sport, either swimming, basketball, wheelchair fencing, whatever it may be, the more you hung out with people in wheelchairs with disabilities, the more you felt comfortable with your own disability, and the more you felt confident about it, so that when people do stare and ask you questions, you feel comfortable to answer them, and you don't feel like they're staring because you're a freak show.
No, and it builds up that confidence in yourself as well, which I think
you know, one of my taglines is that the wheelchair was the best and worst thing that's ever happened to me. And it's the worst thing because it took away my love of cycling, and it didn't take my love away. No, that's wrong. I still love cycling and I still have a passion for it, but it took away my ability to go and enjoy the countryside on a bike. But it grew me as a person to a point where I'm more comfortable and confident than I ever was before. You know, and I'm comfortable in who I am and I'm confident in who I am. So I say it's the best and worst thing that's ever happened to me, and I stick by that. And people always say, you know, would you go back and change it? And I don't think the answer is yes. And then people question it. And I think the answer is not a yes, because without it, the things that came after it wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have met Megs. I wouldn't have been back in Wales. I wouldn't, you know, be on the Paralympic squad aiming to go to Tokyo. You know, all of these things came from that unfortunate event. You know, would I love the use of my legs? Yeah, probably. But I'd miss everything that I got post. Post. And I kind of say, you know, I don't mind people asking questions, because then you can help them understand your perspective, you know, and that's not just about disability, that's across all life. You know, me and my mother-in-law to be have great debates, and she's like, well, I hope you don't mind me asking. I'm like, no, I like this because I'm learning about what you think, and that's just kind of me. That's why I studied law. That's kind of how my brain works. Yeah. You know, and then that doesn't change in my wheelchair. You know, the one thing I do find difficult about people that ask questions is that, and it's honest, you know, and is that everyone wants to know about the 2 seconds that changed my life. No one wants to know what I did before and what I did after. People just want to know about those 2 seconds that caused my spinal injury. And I still struggle with that 4 years on, because I did so much before my accident, and I've done so much since my accident. Why don't people want to know about that? And during lockdown, like you know, I kind of set up webinars when I was doing webinars with kids in schools, and some of the questions I was getting from kids was incredible. And
I love what they come out with.
That's kind of made me then go, okay, well, what are you going to do post rowing? Okay, I'm going to pursue a career in education, because I just loved the sessions with the children, and seeing them grow throughout those 10 weeks that I was with them, and it was incredible, you know. And I think, you know, my godson sums it up brilliantly. He's only ever known me to be in a wheelchair. He didn't know me before. He didn't know me, you know. He only knows this version of me. And whenever we go to family events, you know, I get out of my chair quite a lot. So I sit in the sofa, or I'll sit on the floor, or, you know, I don't always sit in my chair. So that means that there's a chair empty, but all the other seats in the room are taken. So the adults kind of look at the wheelchair and don't sit in it, because there's this social awkwardness about it. Whereas George, my 3-year-old godson,
climbs up, and he is
straight up in it, you know, and he's like, this is the best seat in the house, you know. And that's what I love about my nephews,
you're an uncle with wheels. What more could you want?
Yeah, you know, and my nephew comes along with his tool gun, and he's got like an F1 machine, and he comes up to my wheels. He comes up to my wheels and does it to my wheels, and, you know, yeah, they love it, you know. And I think kids ask the best questions, but sometimes I wish adults were that way inclined and not embarrassed to ask questions, because I'm not going to shout at them. You know, if they want to ask a question, I'll answer their question. You know, I'd rather them ask than stand there awkwardly looking at me. But
I get like 2 or 3-year-olds come and start pushing me in a supermarket, and the adults, the parents, are more like so embarrassed. They're like, I'm so sorry. And they're like, why are you in that? And they're pushing me around. And you're like, oh, it's fine. Like, I'll happily sit and tell him. Like, I think it's important they know. The parents are the one embarrassed, which is really interesting.
You get the kid that's staring at you down the aisle, and they're like staring at you because they're like, that's really cool, but why? Like, they can't work out why you're in it. And they're like,
yeah,
why isn't everyone in one of those? And then the parents like, stop looking. And like trying to stop the kid from looking at you. And I'm like, no, it's cool. Like,
I'm like, hello.
Yeah, like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, what's, and then I remember it must have been, I don't know, halfway through lockdown. I don't see very many manual wheelchair users in my local area. It's quite a small community. And where I walk my dog normally, I was driving past that area, but there was a little kid and he was in a small wheelchair, and I saw him and I was like, oh, I'm going to pull over and have a conversation. He was with his grandparents. I didn't just pull over randomly to talk to a kid. But I had my GB t-shirt on and I pulled over. I was like, oh, this is going to sound so weird, but it's really cool to see another manual wheelchair user. Like, what's good. Like, I was talking to the grandparents and I was like, what's your grandson's disability? It was spina bifida. I was like, hey mate, what's your name? Like, and he was like, Johan. So we had a great conversation then, Johan and I, and he was like, why are you in a wheelchair? And I gave him the story and said, my wheelchair's in the back of the car. He's like, oh, cool, I can still drive when I'm older. And I said, yeah, of course you can. Yeah. Like, I'm driving, like these little things. And then we were talking about, well, what sport do you do? And I was like, oh, I row. And he was like, oh, cool. Like, do you do it competitively? I said, yeah, I'm fourth in the world and hopefully going to the Paralympics. And he was like, you can see his eyes light up because he's obviously never seen a manual wheelchair.
He has never had that role model or anything.
Or the manual wheelchair in his community. Like, he can't see it anywhere. Yeah. So we were chatting for ages, and I gave him one of my business cards. I said, look, if you've ever got a question, get your mum or your grandma to call me and, I'll happily come and meet you or play basketball on the green, like these little things I don't mind doing. Because to him, that's going to be amazing. He's going to be like, oh, I met Ben. And actually, we went for an ice cream yesterday, me, Megs, and my mother-in-law to be, and his grandma was in the shop and she came over and she said, oh, he has to talking about you, now all he wants to do is be a Paralympian and like all this kind of cool stuff. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Get him to speak to me, and we'll see what we can do. Because it's those little conversations that I think, like you did with me, when you took me shopping for Christmas, those little things changed who I am in a wheelchair, and hopefully that will help him deal with his disability.
I think it's important to have that opportunity to be able to ask those questions that you can't ask anyone else because they're not in that situation, they're not in that experience with you. But if someone's been through it, then I think it's important to have someone to ask those questions to. Yeah. But so your life changed because of your accident, and you had your accident during the sport you love, which is, I think, it's really hard doing. But then that was 4 years ago in 8 days' time.
Yeah.
Get it right. I can't believe it's been 4 years. I can't get over that. Anyway, you've come so far. So we met because you came down to my basketball club, and that's probably the best thing you could have done when you're being at Stoke Mandeville. But how did you find Stoke Mandeville as an experience in itself?
Well, I was really, I say now that I hate going back to Stoke Mandeville, but that's only because it has so many memories there that that I don't know. But I was very fortunate to have that as my spinal unit, because you look at like Helen Fincham, for example, that went to the Welsh Rockwood Centre. She didn't have the experiences I had because she didn't have the expertise or the facilities there that Stoke Mandeville has. When I was at Stoke Mandeville, I literally tried, must have been a dozen, 13, 14, 15 different sports, and if it wasn't,
I think that's important too at that age.
Well, yeah, by the time I left hospital, I knew the sport I wanted to do. And I'm not saying sport is the avenue everyone has to go down. I'm a massive believer. It was one of my big bugbears, actually. I hate the question, well, what Paralympic sport are you going to do? Because people get an injury. They might not want to do sport. They might want to become a doctor. They might want to be an artist, Look at Henry Fraser and the art he does. That's incredible. He was a sports person before, but look at the art he does now. Incredible.
I was in hospital with Henry. He was amazing. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had a back operation at the same time he had his injury, and I'm glad he's doing so well. And like you say, it doesn't have to be sport the route you go down, and he's writing as well. He's great at it.
Yeah.
So.
But for me, sport was where I needed to go, So
but that's probably natural because you'd come from sport, so it was probably a natural progression that you wanted to get back into some sort of competitiveness, I would have thought.
Yeah, so when I was in Stoke Mandeville, by the time I left, I knew what sport I wanted to do because I had the opportunities to try all the sports whilst I was undergoing rehab. So I didn't have to spend that time outside of hospital going, well, what sport do you want to do? And trying to find the clubs and trying to find everything. You know, by the time I left, I was like, yeah, I want to play wheelchair basketball on the side and I want to do rowing as my sport, you know, and that's kind of what I did for a long time. And another great thing I love about Stoke Mandeville is that it doesn't separate you. So there are little kids that have got spina bifida or illnesses that have caused it, or even an injury, you know, have caused their spinal injury. And they're wheeling around in their little tiny wheelchairs, you're zooming around everywhere. And then you've got people at the other end of their scale that might have fallen and had an injury, or people like myself that have had a sporting injury, car crash, etc. And you're all together. And I think because of that exposure to a range of spinal injuries, it's a really safe place to be. And I think then you get loads of experiences and you kind of learn from each other. That community aspect is in the hospital as well. So I think I was very fortunate to have Stoke Mandeville as my base or my unit. But then it led to some difficulties in the fact that my family lived 4 hours away and that London, my home, was too far away and inaccessible. So I think that's how we met, really, because I was stuck in hospital. I couldn't go home, and I couldn't, you know, a weekend release, I couldn't go home and I couldn't go to London because my house was inaccessible. So I spent my time in hospital, and I was like, well, what can I do? Oh, the Aces train on a Thursday, literally a 3-minute push away, and they play on a Saturday, a 3-minute push away. So let's go down and watch them. And that's kind of where I met your mum, and then my mum introduced me to you, and that's kind of where it went. And I met Andy and some great people along the way. And yeah, you know, and I you know, another turn on the road, you know, a decision that I made had a great impact on my life. And I think you're one of those decisions, you know. If I didn't go to that, I wouldn't have met your mum, I wouldn't have met you, you know, and all these little things. I'm a real big believer in things happen for a reason. So
I think that's a big thing as well, that I think it's good to wheel into a room full of disabled people when you've just been newly injured. I think that's, especially disabled people doing sport, if you go into that sports hall and there's a whole full sports hall of wheelchairs playing sport, I think that's a really good start when you've just been newly injured, to be like, oh my goodness, this is actually happening. Like,
yeah, and you know, I said to the kids, you know, the little kids that I was doing the courses with through lockdown, you know, and I said that, why did I enjoy my sports session at hospital so much? And I said it wasn't because it was a sports session, it was because for that hour I was with 10, 15 other people in wheelchairs having fun, just like those kids do at their break time or their lunchtime. I wasn't a disabled person, I was just in that sports hall having fun with my mates. And I think that was really important. I got that from the Aces, you know, the disability kind of goes out the window. No one asks about your disability, no one asks any questions. You're just there to play basketball, you're there to have fun. And all my good things in my life have happened because of sport, and I think sport's a huge thing. But
yeah, like even if you said, like, even if you aren't gonna do sport as your main like hobby in life, I would encourage any newly injured person just to have a go at it, because like you say, it can be a mental release. Just that exercise in general can be a good mental release for the mental health and to meet people as well. I think it's a good starting space.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You know, if you are newly injured and you're struggling to come to terms with the wheelchair or disability life, or even if you're a walker and you're struggling with not being like everyone else, you know, I think if you can find a sports club that has disabled members or, you know, the like, go there and just introduce yourself, because they have been there, they've done it, they've seen it, they've experienced it themselves, and they are a shoulder to lean on and ask questions and ask advice for, you know. And you don't have to be the world's best basketball player, rugby player, tennis player, swimmer, or anything. The disability community is a really friendly one. And I think the more I'm in it, the more I'm starting to meet people and really enjoy. And I don't know why. I think it's because when you compare it to able-bodied sport, we've already got a story. Everyone's already got a story of why they're in a wheelchair, or why they've lost a leg, or why they have a disability, whatever their illness was, or whatever it may be. They've already got their story. So there's no egos. I think everyone gets there and they're on the same field, so they just want to help. And I think that's a really cool thing about the Paralympic movement and the Paralympic community. And so for newly injured patients, find a sports club. You don't have to be the best, but you'll have 10, 15 other people there that will be able to help you through your new life. And that's what I found when I joined the Aces.
Oh. So then you went on during your rehab, you started like trying out rowing, didn't you? How did then GB Rowing find you and pick you up?
So yeah, like I said, I wasn't allowed to, well, I was allowed to leave the hospital, but I couldn't leave the hospital.
Yeah.
So Stoke Mandeville had, or Liv used to run this after school program, I used to call it. But it was like a Tuesday night, and it used to be like different activities came in, and
that's cool.
One of them was rowing, and the first time they came in, it was the first week I was in hospital, and I wasn't very good. I could barely push a wheelchair around. And then the last time they came in, it was the week of my discharge, 23rd of December, and they saw.
So they've seen a big difference.
And they saw the big difference in the time, 6 months or whatever it may be, 3 months it may be. And then they were like, okay, well, if you've made that much difference now, then what could you make if we trained you? So I got invited to go along to Paralympic trials. And as you can imagine, I never sat in a rowing boat before. I didn't even know what a rowing boat looked like. I didn't know what a Paralympic rowing boat looked like. And I remember being sat with a rope tied to me, learning how to row as people were speeding past me, And that was kind of my first exploration into para rowing. And at the time, I obviously wasn't good enough. So they said, we want you on our development program, but you're not good enough to be on the Paralympic squad, understandably. So I kind of went away and went back to work and kind of focused on getting my life back together whilst also training. And then 3 years later, out of nowhere, some speed came along and I managed to qualify for the World Championships and then qualify Britain as space at the Paralympics, and this year now, I'm going to be hoping to fight for my place at the Paralympics. So that's pretty exciting.
I have no doubt about it. I'm so excited for you. But yeah, like you said, you progressed so quickly, and you'd already, in November 18, you'd already broken the indoor world record, hadn't you?
Yeah, so I had...
That's 2 years after your accident. That's insane.
Yeah, over 1,000 meters. So we raced over 2,000 meters, and in November 2018, I pulled the 1,000 meter world record. And I remember then we had the 2K British champs 2 weeks later, and I was like, well, if I've done that, I can definitely do the British one as well. Like I can get the 2K record. And I remember going there and having my pants pulled down, and I was like, oh, I got really disheartened. Like I just had a really good performance 2 weeks ago. Why can't I then do it again? But I was so new to my injury and life in a wheelchair that I didn't realize how much pulling that took out of me, took out of my whole life, just, it would have happened if I was an able-bodied. Pulling a world record takes a lot out of you. So then this year just gone, 2019, I went and pulled the 2K world record. So I focused on it and managed to get it, and I beat it by 22 seconds. So.
I also read somewhere that when you were in hospital, someone put up a leaderboard somewhere, and that was it. That spurred you on because you were then like, well, I want to be at the top of it, and I could see this competitiveness in you.
Yeah, and again, we talk about another turn on the road. If John Cook, a patient at the hospital at the time, hadn't told me about that leaderboard, I wouldn't be here today because I hated rowing. I found it so boring on the rowing machine. I found it so boring, but because he told me there was a leaderboard, I was like, well, okay, if there's a leaderboard, I can train and I can try and get better. And it was that element of competitiveness that then made me like rowing, because I could hurt myself on the rowing machine in a way that I used to do when I was cycling. And that was all, I missed the ability to hurt myself like I did when I cycled, and having the leaderboard in Stoke Mandeville spurred me on. And I left, I think, either top or third place. I was top wheelie because the two people above me could walk around in some manner of fashion.
Yes, but you were top, really.
Yeah, exactly. Fakers. No, I'm joking. But no, yeah, so if it wasn't for John mentioning that leaderboard, I wouldn't have progressed to where I am. But yeah, if I set myself a goal, I try and beat it. So I've got a goal this year to get selected and head out to Tokyo. And it was meant to be the Paralympic finals on Sunday for rowing. And we had I'm so competitive that I had to set like a couple of friends round and some family round, but I made it into a sports day at the front of my house. just to have a bit of competitiveness. And I had to refrain from getting involved because I tried to get involved in the tug of war and ended up being pulled out of my wheelchair. So
can you imagine that? I can't go to Tokyo because I injured myself in tug of war.
Yeah, so I kind of refrained then from there on and watched my friends get competitive. But yeah, that's really important. Yeah, it's a big competition and trying to strive for the perfection, or I don't know what it is. I don't know why I have that determination or what it is, or stubbornness, whatever you may want to call it. It's just, I've always had it since I was a little boy, and my parents would tell you I was a stubborn kid, and you can see that now, I'm not letting my accident define me, and I want to try and strive for better, and hopefully that'll be a Paralympic medal around my neck, whether that's at Tokyo or Paris, I don't know.
Well, I really hope it's going to be Tokyo because I want to be there and watch you, so I really hope so.
Yeah, me too.
So I don't know if a lot of people understand just how wobbly and tippy the rowing boats can be, and with very little balance when you've been paralysed, how difficult is that to balance in a rowing boat?
Yeah, so I'm laughing because my coaches have made it even more difficult this year. So I actually sit on my right hip. So, everyone has a preference, don't they, when they're paralysed. So I'll try and wheel back, but I sit definitely on the right-hand side of my hip. So I sit on this side of my hip rather than the left. So when I'm sat in my rowing boat, it means that the right-hand side of my boat drags a lot more than the other. And they have two pontoons to kind of help with the balance. And one will sit in the water a lot more than the other. And we worked out that I was losing a lot of time down a course because of the friction, etc., water drag. So my coaches this year have decided to jack up my floats. And so they don't touch the water at all now. But any kind of mistake means that I obviously flop because I have no core control. And we got to a point just before lockdown, maybe in February, where I could link about 20 strokes together with my new float system. And I was getting happy that I could do 20 strokes. And I laughed because my coaches, we got the Tokyo boats came in the other day and they've got this new float system on it. And I sat in it and I couldn't even get one stroke without a float in the water.
Oh no.
I've not done it every day. So I've lost all that, I think with us and, I've got very limited core control. But if you do practice, you kind of cheat with your lats and you can kind of find a way that I can sit and do little things. And I think the practice is definitely not there. So I remember rowing for my first session back after lockdown and I was like, oh God, this is going to be a long slog. So I'm dreading going back on the 21st of September and starting that process again because I just get frustrated. Because it's out of my
you just get to one level and then you've got to go back. It's like 2 steps forward, 1 back, 2 steps forward, 1 back.
When it's something that you cannot control, it just infuriates me, because I know what I need to do in my, with my body, but I'm trying to tell my body to do it and it won't do it. And I think I just get more and more infuriated with it. So that's going to be a long winter, I think. But hopefully it'll pay off. Next summer you'll see me going down the course and you'll be able to put in your research and notes, worked on core control and all this kind of stuff. So yeah,
absolutely.
It'll be exciting to see. I think it's going to be a huge performance game.
What's going on with your training?
So we are on our end of season break, if you want to call it that. So kind of got 3 weeks. Actually, we had 3 weeks off completely where we didn't have to train if we didn't want to.
Okay.
And this is kind of that 3rd week now where, although you don't have to train if you don't want to, it's kind of encouraged to do some kind of activity, be that going for a swim or going to the gym or, something, just go and do something.
Slowly get back.
And then next week we kind of start the return to rowing training remotely from home. And on the 7th of September, we go into a mini quarantine period.
Okay.
So we go to try and create a bubble. So basically, increased hygiene, making sure we don't go to bars, restaurants, pubs, just try and keep within your family unit. Get home deliveries rather than going to the grocery store, etc., etc., etc. So we're doing that. And then I've actually found a flat in Thames Valley in Wokingham Road, Bracknell. Okay. I'll be moving up there to spend some time up there and try and stop the commuting back and forth to Wales. Because I think, everyone's saying that Tokyo 2020 +1 is, a second chance for a lot of people. And I found a couple of things last year that were making me really tired. One was the commuting. Can you hear me okay, or is my computer freezing?
Yeah, no, I can hear you. It's all good.
One of the things I learned last year was that all the driving back and forth to Wales was making me more tired than I kind of realised.
Yeah.
So that was one thing I'm going to change this year and live closer to training. So I'm going to spend the majority of my time in and around the Reading area, and then maybe come back, every fourth weekend or something back to Wales to get my Welsh fix, because that is also important to me. I knew I left my job in London because I knew I wanted to move home to Wales, and being home is important. I like being close to my family, so I'm going to try and play the balance of not traveling too much, but having enough time in Wales that I kind of feel relaxed and refreshed, because I think that's important too.
So do you think it has been a bit of a saving grace that you've got another year to do that final preparation?
Oh, 100%. I left hospital and I wrote down on my, my personal bit of paper, gold medal at Paris 2024. That's my aim. That was my aim. And Tokyo's kind of come a bit soon. I've kind of found some speed a little bit earlier in the process than I probably should have, and I'm not complaining. But Tokyo for me is a learning experience and a stepping stone to that gold at Paris, because gold at Paris is my ultimate goal. So the fact that Tokyo has been pushed back a year only plays into my favour, I think, because I'm very new to the sport. I'm very inexperienced. I've only raced internationally twice. So hopefully, I'll get another year's worth of training under my belt and then race internationally next year and have a little bit more experience to go to the games, touch wood. And
I think it's good to experience as well that atmosphere of a Paralympics, and because I think everyone who's been has told me that first one is just mind-blowing. Like, it's so daunting but also just amazing. You're just taking in so much the experience all the time, so if you can do that on your first one and then focus for the second one.
You say about, is the fact Tokyo's been postponed a benefit? Yeah, I think it is, because you're not there as British rowing, you're there as Team GB, and that is across all the sports, aren't you? So you're a small part in a big machine. And during lockdown, Lauren Rolls started some workouts with other athletes from across member of the...
I think I saw that. That's a great idea.
So now when I get to Tokyo, I'll have some friendly faces in different sports that will make going to such a big event not seem so daunting, because you'll have 4 or 5 other friendly faces in different sports that you can kind of, if you're in a food hall, you're not, and say the rowers have got a race the next day, but I don't because my race is a day different. I can go down the food hall and still see 5 people I know.
Yeah.
Rather than going down and being by yourself, which I think was a great possibility. I'm not afraid of making friends, but it's very daunting, isn't it? Your first Paralympic Games, and then you're wheeling into a room full of hundreds of athletes. It's going to be very daunting,
Yeah.
So,
well, I'm so excited for you to go to Tokyo. I have faith that you're going to get there. And when will you know officially?
That's the difficult thing, because we were undergoing trials when lockdown kind of happened. We were in the last kind of process of that. So British rowing have been really good, and the people that were trialing are kind of like, they're not going to add any new members to that.
Okay, good.
The people that are trialing are staying as the people that are trialing. So we all battle it out internally in that group, but we'll kind of know, I think, a little bit earlier than normal, because we've already whittled it down. So for example, if you had 15 people in this time last year, that would get down to about 8-9 people by the time the last trials come down. So we're already in that small group of people going into selection. So the selection process will be a little bit leaner, which is a good thing, I think, because it kind of rewards the hard work that everyone's done. I think it would be a shame then if British rowing said, "Oh, we're going to open the floodgates and people from all over can come back in." I think that would have been a bit unfair to the people that lost out, and a bit unfair to the people that worked so hard. So it'll be interesting to see how it pans out, and an interesting decision in our sport is that the governing body have decided to hold a full World Championships, say we get home, I think it's 7 days after I get married. So it must be like 3 weeks post Paralympic Games, 4 weeks post Paralympic Games.
Wow.
So normally in a Paralympic year, they decide to hold like a mini World Championships for non-Paralympic boat classes. But this year they decided to hold a full World Championship. So I think it's going to be interesting to see who goes to that. I know I won't be because I'm going to be getting married, so I will not be going.
You're honeymooning.
Throwing that out there now, so I won't be going. But maybe British Rowing can use the opportunity to create like a development squad and get somebody some experience at big championships, which I think then will benefit going into Paris cycle.
Yeah.
Because that's the interesting thing, that now that Tokyo 2020 has been pushed back, it's shortened the Paris cycle by a year. So it's going to have
you've got to get straight on it.
It's had a huge knock-on effect, like a butterfly effect, huge knock-on effect to the next Olympics. So yeah, I'm really excited for the next year and a half, see what happens.
I'll be watching. I'll be there to watch you.
Yeah, I know. So, yeah.
Okay, so the final question that I seem to ask everyone, because I think it's a really good one to ask. But away from sport, it's important to have that downtime and to have that time where you switch off and rest and just focus on you as well and what you like. So the question I'm asking everyone is, what is your guilty pleasure? What do you like to do to help you switch off?
Call of Duty.
It could be food, it could be a TV program.
No, I've got a couple of things. That's why I was laughing, is that if I didn't mention Call of Duty, I think Meg would slap me, because I seem to spend a lot of time playing Call of Duty.
Surprised that's not come up more actually at the moment.
I play, and the worst thing is I play with my brother's mates. So, people are 8 years younger than me, and they're all better than me. But coffee, I think. I love like a good coffee and coffee music. I love that combination of making a good coffee roast and then putting on a vinyl player and enjoying the music. That's kind of what I do to completely relax down. But I do spend a lot of time.
What kind of music do you like?
I'm eclectic. Country is my favorite genre. That is, to Meg's dismay, she hates country music, but it's my favorite genre of music. And then anything really from electro punk all the way through to screamo. I kind of have quite an eclectic taste.
Oh wow! Yeah, that's a big fan.
Big fan. But if I'm having a long road trip in the car, it's definitely country music most of the time.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's a bit different. I go to a festival in London called Country to Country, and I moved to Greenwich off topic, but I moved to Greenwich post accident because it was on the Jubilee line, and I could get to work, and I could also get into London on the Jubilee line. That was really important. I didn't want to live somewhere. Yeah. My only journey could be to work and back. I wanted to be able to go. And I remember I moved in March, and I was with my dad, and I was wheeling around by the O2, and there was all these people dressed up as cowboys and stuff, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? Like, this is odd. Like, what is going on? And I did some research, and I found out there was a country music festival, and so every year since I go, and I enjoy it, I love it. Yeah. So.
Oh, and it takes you back to London too. That's quite nice.
It always falls my birthday weekend, which means I don't have to pay for a ticket, so that's great.
Perfect. Always a bonus.
Yeah. So music and a good coffee is kind of my guilty pleasure.
The perfect combination, I think. Well done.
Yeah.
Well, I've probably kept you far too long now.
No, I probably rambled on too much for you. So.
No, it's perfect. You're amazing. Thank you.
No problem at all.
But it's just been so nice of me to see you again and just like know you're okay and you're doing absolutely amazing. So well done.
It's been way too long, but life gets in the way as ever. But good friends don't need to speak every week.
I mean, I'll excuse you because you're being an elite athlete, and that's the main thing.
Thanks, Ella.
I know how much time it takes up of your life, so don't worry.
Yeah, we'll definitely get a coffee in when I move to Bracknell. So let's get a date in the diary.
And when you're allowed out your bubble, if this whole COVID comes down ever, then just come along to training one day and say hi. I'd love to see you.
No, I'll absolutely be coming to watch games now I'm closer. 100%.
Yeah.
I won't be able to.
We might have some games over that way actually, so I'll let you know if we do.
Yeah, I won't be able to play, but I'll come and watch.
Yeah, come watch. Yeah, that's fine. No worries.
Yeah. All right.
Well, so lovely to see you, and I look forward to meeting Meg one day.
I'm sure you will. Catch you later, Ella.
Bye. See you soon.
Bye.